Before I tell you the cause and in my judgment of this great collapse of the practice of faith, we should stop for a minute and look at it because this is unheard of in American history, absolutely unheard of. And it also is very much contra global trends. So in our country, to see a generation that doesn't explicitly affirm faith in God, the vast majority, but is confessing that on the subject, the most important subjects in the world, does God exist? What is the purpose of my life? Is there life after death? To confess agnosticism on those most fundamental questions, this is catastrophic. This is a massive thing. This is not just, you know, are people driving at an older age, right? Or are they having a difficulty buying houses? Those sociological studies are interesting, but that's not what this is about. This is fundamental human realities that determine everything. So this is a unique time. Pinpointing the cause of it on our local scene here in the West, in the collapsing secular West, is a very important thing to do. But before I suggest what the cause is, let me also point out that worldwide, faith and religion is exploding. There are no places on the globe that are contemplating and enthused by unbelief except in the collapsing secular West. So the globalization project, which has been going on, led by very secular forces from the West, is running into tremendous problems all over the world, because at the heart of kind of the Great Reset globalization process is this complete rejection of faith as any sort of normative guide for life. And that's just not where the world is. It just so happens that here in the West, we are, shall we say, particularly your generation, Generation Z, is inheriting the mess of their parents, who have given themselves to the secular project with abandon. I could suggest that it really started with the sexual revolution in the 1960s, and that has progressed by an undoing of basic kind of moral and religious norms in our society. So in my lifetime, being born in Southern California, I'm in Los Angeles and Angelino, I witnessed the overthrow of marriage. So the passage of divorce law, what's called no-fault divorce, happened when I was a young man. Then that was followed very quickly by the legalization of abortion in 1973. That was followed by the promotion of the decriminalization of sodomy and all sorts of sexual perversion. That climaxed in 2003 with the Lawrence versus Texas decision, which the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia said was the death of all morals legislation in America. Right. Yeah. And so we've seen this progressive movement. Then we in the Obergefell decision in 2016, which decimated a definition of marriage in order to accommodate a small kind of movement of the LGBT movement, who weren't interested in marriage. Since they got the permission to marry, only a tiny percentage of that group have actually accessed marriage. That movement has never been interested in marriage. What they were interested in was ending marriage as a normative social reality. And they have succeeded in doing that. When I was born in Los Angeles in 1967, 75% of all the households in California had a mother, a father, and children in it. It was just vastly normative. Today, that number is something like 41%, which means the majority of all homes don't even have a normal family, what all normal societies would consider essential to the propagation of their society. A husband, a wife, and children. That's no longer normative. So your generation has been raised by a significant contingent of people who have thrown off traditional religious and moral norms, and you have been, what shall I say, eating the gravel of that social experiment, which has never been done before in the history of the world. There is no precedent for this total rebellion against moral norms in any place. And yet it's being promoted like it's so obvious, Like, it's so obvious. I remember as a marker in my own life when President Obama was running for office. President Obama, I knew by reading his voting record, I knew that he was not in any way a traditional religious person or a traditional American with regards to morality. But he had to publicly defend those positions, including traditional marriage. He had to publicly defend those positions on both of his campaigns for his first election to president and his second term as well. In fact, he even met at large churches, catering, accommodating the Christian population, and said in those to those audience that he absolutely was a defender of traditional marriage until he won his second election. Within 1 month of being elected and never, of course, being able to be elected again, and therefore not needing to lie anymore, he had a revelation that marriage didn't need to be between a man and a woman, which is basically saying the traditional family is not important. And he had a revelation, and he didn't just have a revelation. Evidently, at the same time that he had this moral development in his life, his Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, also came to some sort of revelation that homosexuality was now perfectly normative and having traditional marriage was worthless. But they also decided that not only have they personally changed, but they decided that everybody else in the entire country had to change. And so they said, both of them, both President Obama and his Secretary of State Clinton, said publicly that any religion that defined marriage as a man and a woman were prejudiced and, quote, needed to change their doctrine, unquote. Can you imagine? These are politicians who had a moral change. First of all, when you run for office and you pledge something, you're not allowed to morally change because you promised to defend a certain morality. You're not free to just tell the people who voted for you the next day, I'm sorry, I don't believe any of that anymore, okay? That's deceit. But not only did they have a change, but they said we all needed to change. These politicians became theologians. Nobody knew that Hillary Clinton was a theologian. Nobody knew that Barack Obama was a theologian. Now they actually know the morality, the ethics, and that people, religious groups, the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church, the evangelical churches, we need to change our morality. And they didn't stop there. They created an ambassadorship. To be an ambassador of the United States is a very great honor. It's a very serious position where you represent the president of our country in diplomatic relations with other countries. They invented an ideological ambassadorship for the promotion of the LGBT agenda and sent that person, which continues, by the way, President Trump did not negate it. President Trump, forgive me, is terrible on this issue of marriage and human sexuality. He allowed the ideological LGBT ambassador to remain, and that ambassador goes around the world telling countries that they cannot be defended by us, their poor cannot be supported by us, unless they join this secular rush to the overthrow of traditional religious norms and this attack on Jesus and the Christian faith. And this is where we are today. Yeah. Can you do that? Can you overturn the wisdom of the ages and not have terrible consequences, not kill hope, not hurt the formation of marriages? Can you have a revolution in which moral norms are abandoned and think people are going to be prospering and healthy? I don't think so. I think that this is the source of a lot of confusion, and we're paying a terrible price. It sounds pretty depressing, but I'll tell you, as a pastor, I've never seen the level of reconsideration amongst young people as I have today. So, a number of young people who are questioning the state of the world as they inherited it from their parents, questioning the fundamental commitments of those who have created a world in which they are less well off, and I don't just mean financially, I mean in every way, mental health, relationships-wise, than their parents. This is the first time that's ever happened in American history. And the young people are saying, hey, what did you do? What did you do? And they're reconsidering. I've always, as a priest, I've always had a large number of people that I prepare for baptism and that I baptize and help become Christians. That's all. That's what priests do. But that number since COVID has quadrupled.
Wow.
Yeah, quadrupled. This last Easter, I had 110 catechumens asking for baptism. This is a parish of about 1,000 people. That's a significant percentage of our these are new people who have never practiced the Christian faith, and they're wanting faith. They want to know God. They want time-tested life. And it's not just here, it's happening all over Western Europe. I was recently just in the country of Romania. While I was there, I received statistics from baptisms in different European countries. 12,000 people were baptized on the day before Easter into the Catholic Church in France. And the Catholic Church in France has been shrinking for decades. And now what do you see? Almost all of those 12,000 people are young. So there is a serious reconsideration going on. How big it will be, I don't know.
Right.
But I certainly hope it will be massive.
Right.
Absolutely massive.
Good.